Okay, yep, go ahead.
Okay, all right, 6:37. We're gonna go ahead and call the Plan Commission meeting in order. Please rise and for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. Christina, can you call roll call, please?
Spencer Kingery,
Present.
Jacob Christ,
Present.
I'm here. Brian Garrison,
Present.
Dana Myers,
Present.
Aaron Brew, here. All here.
We are all here. All right, in your package, you guys were presented the meetings for minutes from March 16th.
Wonderful.
Yeah, super lengthy minutes. So I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes from March 16th.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion by Aaron Jubal and a second by Jacob Grist. Any discussion on those minutes? None. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Approve the minutes. So the second thing we got going on is going to be the public hearing for the PC 26-004-ZA Orgal Acre rezoning. So at this time, we'll go ahead and suspend the regular Plan Commission meeting at 6:38 p.m. and then open it up for the public hearing. Deb, can you go ahead and explain what's going on with that, please?
So back in earlier this year, we had a rezoning for the original site. After doing some drainage calculations and such, it was determined, hey, we need to add a little more acreage to this project to make it all work together. So the petitioner is requesting approval of rezoning an additional 0.85 acres for this project, still same location. The purpose of the petition is to add the acreage for the residential project. Properties surrounding the subject property in all directions remain zoned R1. The comprehensive plan's future land use map calls this area out for commercial development. For the developer, the proposed duplex development would be aimed at first-time home buyers, young families, and seniors, and would provide low-maintenance living without the burden of yard maintenance. Yay, we all like that. The neighborhood would be managed by a homeowners association. The applicant just had variances approved for setbacks, lot coverage, and lot size to enable this particular development of this unique product on this site. Once zoning is finalized, the variances are in place. The final step would be for subdivision review and approval by the Plan Commission before development would begin. Your staff report does contain the latest and greatest concept plan layout for the project, so you can get an idea of what that's gonna look like. Since we're only dealing with 0.85 acres and we're adding on to an existing project, I'm not gonna bore you with all the details of the differences in the different zoning districts and such. There are criteria that the Plan Commission and the City Council shall pay regard to when evaluating the rezoning. The first one is that the Plan Commission shall pay reasonable regard to the comprehensive plan. Staff has determined that the existing residential development in the area and the goal of providing housing opportunities in this area outweigh the originally suggested commercial corridor that the comprehensive plan had contemplated. It's staff's opinion that this proposed rezoning is compatible with the comprehensive plan. The next finding is that the Plan Commission shall pay reasonable regard to current conditions and the character of current structures and uses in each district. Staff finds that this area is characterized by low density and medium density residential development. And staff agrees that commercial development is not really appropriate for this particular site. It's staff's opinion that the proposed development does pay reasonable regard to the current conditions and character of the area. The third finding is that the Plan Commission shall pay reasonable regard to the most desirable use for which the land in each district is adapted. Staff finds that with the exception of a manufactured home park, the subject property is suitable for all of the proposed land uses allowed in the R2 district. It's staff's opinion that the proposed development could be considered a desirable land use for this area. Number 4, the Plan Commission shall pay reasonable regard to the conservation of property values throughout the jurisdiction. Staff finds that the proposed development is similar to development in the surrounding area. It is not unknown at this time what the aesthetic finishes the petitioner is considering, but the physical appearance of the residential structures could also have a positive impact on surrounding property values. It's staff's opinion that the proposed development would contribute to the conservation of property values throughout the city. And lastly, the Plan Commission shall pay reasonable regard to responsible development and growth. Staff finds that the proposed development would provide a unique housing opportunity that isn't readily available in the area. It's staff's opinion that the proposed residential development for the site would be considered a responsible development and growth. With that being said, staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward the rezoning of this additional piece of property to the City Council with a favorable recommendation with the same conditions that also applied to the original rezoning for this project. Number 1, land uses. Manufactured home park should not be allowed as a special exception land use on the site because it would not be in context with the existing and surrounding land uses. Number 2, concept plan. The development shall significantly resemble the current proposed layout and description provided with the application. And lastly, for the Plan Commission to accept the voluntary commitments that the applicant has provided, including that the property shall be developed exclusively as residential duplex subdivision, and the units shall be sold as fee simple, where the unit owner holds title to the structure and the underlying lot. Number 2, a dog park and children's play area shall be provided and installed before the last 25% of the lots are developed. Number 3, the development will establish an HOA to oversee property maintenance and approvals. And number 4, the development will be connected to the city's sanitary sewer system. And that is all.
Scott, would you like to come up and talk about?
Yeah, the change is very slight from what we had. It's just, it's basically, it's gonna give us the ability, and I'm gonna call it a toe sticking out the top now. For a cul-de-sac area for fire trucks, that type of stuff is the main reason, because we're gonna have to set a house back a little bit in order to make this work. So our engineers just developed it that way, so we need to do it for that. So aesthetically, it's not changing much from our last plan we brought to you. You know, we're still looking at having the pondage up towards 200. And the park and the dog area, I think are gonna be up by 200 by water tower apartments there in that little cutoff. At least that's the plans. So nothing else has changed. The houses haven't changed. The size hasn't changed. Nothing other than we just needed just a, unfortunately, like 5 acres more. It's this portion work. I would like to stress that, you know, our goal is that this would just be the first stage of this. So, you know, if this goes well, you know, our goal is to give an option for more acreage out there to continue growing and keep putting up these types of products, or maybe a different type of product the city would see that'd be beneficial in the future. So be happy to try to answer any questions if you have them.
I have one. So when you get this, the official plat and parcels and all that's finished, will this be comboed into the original?
Yes,
Okay.
it's part of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
It seems as though the intention is you have to have a turnaround for a fire truck, right?
Yep.
Right.
We've even got one space that we've drawn on the new plan that where there's a road that's gonna be heading, and pardon me, I get turned around, I think it's gonna be heading east. It'll dead end. And we've got a lot that will remain empty there until another expansion is done to ensure that the EMS, fire safety, all that'll have an opportunity to turn around there. So
Nice.
our engineer put that in place. And he's talked with the FNS about all this, gone over all the other items. I believe that they're favorable towards it as well.
Yep. Our engineering team's been working with your team and going through step by step just to make sure that, you know, the design standards and all that have been met, and we are on track. So
Just a bump we're adding to the grant.
yeah.
Any other questions for Scott?
Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. All right, we'll open it for public comments. Any public comments? Second round for public comments. And third and final round. There are no other public comments. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing for PC 26-004-ZA at 6:47 PM. And we will resume the normal PC meeting at 6:47 PM. So is this going to be a voting matter for the rezoning right at this point? For the make a.
Just make a motion for
Okay.
for what you just discussed, yes.
Alrighty, so I would entertain a motion to approve the rezoning. And PC 26-004-ZA Oracle Acres from R1 to R2.
I would make a motion that we forward the rezoning, of these fees to the city council with a favorable recommendation.
Yep, there we go.
Condition.
With the same conditions that
Same
apply to the original part.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by Christina and a second by Aaron. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And I am an aye. Those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion passes, and we'll send it off to the city council. Next order of business is the what?
No, I'm just gonna do my notes.
Gotcha. Next order of business is the UDO amendment for the residential setbacks. Deb, can I get a motion to approve and then we'll discuss it? I have a motion by Denny. There's second. Second by Brian. Deb, you want to discuss it?
Sure, so it had been brought to my attention that all the different setbacks based on the zoning district could get a little confusing. With our most recent developer in the room here, who had asked to go down to 5 feet. The discussion was that may have been a preferable setback for all zoning districts going forward. So currently, R1 is a 7-foot side yard setback, R2 is 6-foot side yard setback, and R3 is also a 6-foot side yard setback. So wanted to get the planning commission's feel for dropping all of those down to a uniform 5-foot setback. Still exceeds what building code separation would be, but it would simplify things for development going forward. Next steps in the process would be to formally create the UDO amendment, do the public hearing for that at a future meeting.
And 5 feet is pretty standard in several counties and yeah, talking to different projects around the northern part of the state, looking through their UDOs and zoning process, the 5 feet was pretty common, so it simplifies things and still gives us what, a foot for code. So we still have an additional, was it standard 4 foot for statute
Well, building.
for building code?
Put separation between buildings.
Buildings, yeah.
So with the 5-foot side yard setback, somebody could still have a structure on the property line because it's a non-conforming situation or something, so. Makes that.
Yep.
Is there any discussion further about it? No?
No.
So this is gonna be a consensus to draft, or should this be an actual?
This will be a consensus for Deb to move forward with the public notice portion, and then we will reconvene. Does this have to reconvene for APC or does it go to council?
And no, it would go to the planning commission for a notice of the hearing
Okay,
for the final vote.
is
So-
that 3 publications or just 1?
This one.
Okay. Yep.
All right, so is there a consensus to go ahead and move on with the UDO amendment?
Yes.
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 Good. Okay. Matt, go ahead. All right, the second thing we got going on is the amendment for the PC rules and procedures. Can I go ahead and get a motion if you guys want to combine them from the Article 2, Section 7, Article 10, Section 1 BI?
I make a motion, let's combine them.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Brian. Deb, forward again.
Sure, in accordance with some recent legislation that has changed, that came into effect this year, and I'll just go ahead and give the same spiel that we talked about with the BZA. There were some concerns that when you have a new administration, whether it's new council, new mayor, new county commissioners, that those elected officials want some type of confidence that going forward, the goals and objectives of all the plans that are in place are going to be held up by the Plan Commission and the BZA at their hearings as well. So, and this applies to many different groups, economic development, all these things and appointments. So what they're wanting to do is, if for some reason you're not voting that's in the way that supports those plans and such, the entity or the appointing authority that puts you in your spot or membership position has the authority to remove you if they feel you're not voting the way you should be. So that's why this language is put into place, that you serve at the pleasure of the appointing authority. There is a caveat, though: the appointing authority that puts you in place is the only one that can remove you. So if you're appointed by the mayor changes, the new mayor can't take you out. There would have to be for cause. If you're appointed by the city council and the city council changes, you're locked into your spot. They can't take you out. So there is still for cause language that would still apply. For example, if you stop showing up for meetings, we have 3 consecutive regularly scheduled meetings. That would be a reason for cause, because we would feel that you're not filling your obligation to serve on the board or the commission. And like I said, this is applying to all appointed boards and commissions at all different levels, not just commissions and BZAs. And so, yeah, this is a statutory change that would go into effect in your rules. The other matter, it's a little confusing with how many folks you need to be notifying for public hearings before the Planning Commission and the BZA. Right now it says 660 feet or at least 2 properties deep, whichever is least. We're wanting to simplify that down to just a flat 300-foot radius of your property. A lot of my communities, especially incorporated areas, are just going down to this flat number. It's easier to go into the auditor's office and say, hey, kick me out a list of every property owner in this radius, and it can generate a list. You don't have to go back through and say, well, am I 2 properties deep? Am I not? Is this guy on the list, not on the list? So this is just merely a way to simplify things and also reduce the number of folks to be notified, thereby reducing the costs to the applicants going forward. It is not a statutory requirement, it's just a streamlining suggestion.
And ultimately, all the items that are presented to these boards are publicized in the paper, you know, the public notice, and then, you know, the due diligence is done, plus the neighborhoods usually communicate with each other. So the front row houses might reach that threshold of 300, but that could probably just by word of mouth go 1,500, 1,700 or a mile. So there's still plenty of room for communications, given that we have a newspaper. We put it in plenty of areas to be well known, but yeah, it makes it a lot simpler for and a cheaper cost for the applicant as well. So
Any other questions from the board? Make a motion to adopt the amended rules, or we already did that, right?
yep, you have a motion for A and B both.
So.
And a second, yep.
Outstanding.
So call vote.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and call a vote for the amendment for the PC rules and procedures for Article 2 and Article 10. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Those opposed say nay. Hearing none, motion passes. So like the last order of business is the discussion of PC 26-005-TA. It is the audit of the UDO. I would entertain a motion to discuss this?
Can Deb give us some back?
We
will.
Yeah,
You'll have to get a
we
motion.
gotta do the motion,
Yep.
then it gets on.
Make a motion to discuss.
I have a
Second,
first by Jacob, second by Aaron.
Sorry about that.
There we go.
So, yeah, so this is gonna be kind of long-winded, so don't hesitate to ask questions going forward. Across the country, there has been expressed that there is a housing shortage and also a housing attainability problem. So we're short on housing, folks who need housing can't afford housing, so there is a national trend to try and make housing easier to build, streamline the development processes, increase that housing supply as such going forward. My computer keeps acting. So essentially, House Bill 1001, which started in the General Assembly, was pretty heavy with thou shalts and thou musts kind of things. There was language that said things like every single family lot can now have an unlimited amount of single family homes and accessory dwellings as long as setbacks and stuff are met. That got dropped, yay, because that would be a headache. There were things that said if your comprehensive plan contemplates high density development, but it's not in your ordinance yet, the comprehensive plan is now gonna act as your ordinance. Well, the way Indiana's set up, that doesn't work. Your comprehensive plan is a guide, not a law, so you can't enforce it that way. There were things that said there's no more parking minimums. Maximum lot size could be 5,500 square feet on lots with sewer and water, and that should now be a cap, a maximum lot size. And of course, that got thrown out. So what did stay in this bill is that there is a ordinance audit, if you will, to try to figure out where communities are maybe stopping or slowing down residential development. How can we curb density? How can we, make housing more affordable, and what can we do in our ordinances to change that? So, as you know, in 2023, Delphi you broke off from the county, you established your own plan commission, BZA, comprehensive plan, and we got your unified development ordinance in place. Things were different in 2023. They're not the same that reflect this legislation. Essentially, the way UDO, the different districts are set up, they're very categorized and they're very specific into what's permitted in each district. There's not a lot of overlap with regard to housing types and variety in each district. So part of this bill and the audit is they gave us 9 points they want us to do a report on and compare how does your ordinance relate, or how can you achieve these 9 points. There is no mandate that you amend your ordinance. There is no mandate that these will be forced on us later, but it does want us to start thinking about what can we do in the city of Delphi to make things easier for residential development to occur. So the first point is, does your ordinance provide for higher density development of duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes in areas designated for single family homes? Based on how our current UDO is set up, we are not doing this. Our R1 district only allows single family dwellings and 2-family dwellings by right. There's no contemplation for triplexes or quads. Our R2 district, which is medium density residential, allows single family and 2-family and multifamily by right. But again, there's no mention of triplexes or anything in between. And lastly, with our R3 district, that high density, it only allows 2-family and multi-development by right. 2-family lots need to be at least 3,000 square foot per unit. Multi-family lots need to be at least 1,000 square foot lot per unit, which is kind of big. So just by the nature of how we have the UDO set up, we're not satisfying this criteria. So some things to consider is maybe reducing the minimum residential lot size only where sewer and water are available. We could consider simplifying, reducing the minimum living area definition for all types of our structures and consider reducing those. And also we could consider expanding the types of residential structures allowed in every district. I don't know if you've heard the term missing middle residential, but it's essentially everything between a duplex and an apartment complex. There's a whole slew of residential units that we could possibly incorporate into our residential districts that might fit. You might be able to put a duplex on a vacant lot in a low density residential district, you know, maybe some criteria that it still looks like a single family home, or, you know, maybe they share a driveway in some way, but where can we kind of tweak our rules to make these different types of housing products work? The next criterion is, does your ordinance allow the construction of other housing types, such as accessory dwelling units and manufactured and modular housing? So in our UDO, accessory dwelling units are only permitted by special exception in the R1 district. This kind of makes sense because that R1 district is where we expect single family homes to go. So it's probably proposed that you consider allowing accessory dwelling units by right on any lot that has a single family dwelling, regardless of what the zoning district is. They would still have to meet lot coverage, setbacks, make sure the sewer and water connections are proper and all those things are correct, but kind of merging those and allowing some flexibility would be a good idea. Another thing, manufactured homes are permitted everywhere, single family homes are permitted, so we don't call those out separately or prohibit them anywhere, so that's a good thing. We just basically make sure the development standards are met, meaning your minimum living area, home size, lot size, things like that. Manufactured home parks have development standards and are permitted by special exception in the R2 district. They're permitted by right in the R3 district, but they are not currently, we don't currently have any in town, I don't think, do we? No, so somebody would have to acquire property, probably rezone it in order to establish a manufactured home park of some sort. The third one, does your ordinance allow the adaptive reuse of commercial buildings for residential uses, such as allowing multifamily development in retail, office, and light manufacturing zones? I have a little bit of issue with this requirement. The city's central business district allows dwellings on the upper floors of buildings by right. As long as the structure meets the building code, the conversion from the existing commercial building to residential use could be done, but it would require a use variance in the commercial districts. And lastly, the intense commercial and industrial districts don't allow residential development because of the incompatibility of the land use. A use variance or rezoning would be required to make this happen. My issue with kind of contemplating this is, again, the way our districts are set up and they're very compartmentalized. You wouldn't want to lose your commercial corridors and your industrial areas to an influx of residential development unnecessarily. So, you know, maybe if we had some more mixed use districts or incorporated it into the commercial districts by special exception or something, it might make sense. But without that connection, it's a little bit difficult. The fourth one, does your ordinance increase the allowable floor area ratio in multifamily housing areas, which basically says somebody's proposing a multifamily, can we drop that home size in relation to the lot size in some way? Our R3 high density residential district allows 2-family and multifamily by right. The lot sizes are a little large for doing this. For the 2-family lots need to be at least 3,000 square foot per unit. Multifamily need to have at least 1,000 square foot of lot area per unit. The minimum living area is 800 square feet for 2-family units and 600 square feet for multifamily dwellings. There is some opportunity to consider reducing that lot size a little more, as well as the living area a little more, especially if they're serviced by sewer and water. And we may want to consider simplifying the term minimum living area. I think right now we have ground floor area, depending if the structure is 1 story or 2 story. Maybe doing away with that, so it's just As long as you have X square footage to live in, that could simplify. Next one, does your ordinance allow the waiving or eliminating regulations such as requirements for garage size and placement, steeper roof pitch, minimum lot size and square footage, greater setbacks, off-street parking, design standards that restrict or prohibit the use of code compliant products or property height limitations? So this is already partially satisfied in our UDO. We do not have requirements for garage size, placement or roof pitch on our homes. We would count garage space and driveway space towards the minimum parking requirement, so it's not like our ordinance says you have to have a 2-car garage on every home. Plus, be able to store 4 cars in the driveway. We don't do that, so that's a good thing. The UDO does not mention or restrict any code compliant residential product, like manufactured homes or engineered homes, as long as they meet the building code and our living area and lot size, you're good to go. We don't call those out separately. As we've identified under the first criteria we talked about, we do have multiple residential districts with various densities that kind of regulate our lot size and living area. The residential structure height is measured to the highest point of a structure, not necessarily the eaves. That goes to 35 feet in the residential districts and 48 feet in the other districts. It's a little bit of a function of what your fire department can, safely put out a fire. If they have the bigger trucks, they could possibly go higher. Or if the structures supply their own sprinkler systems, you can get a little more flexibility on height. So if somebody wanted to go taller, they would have to ask for a variance and justify it in some way, make sure we have fire department sign. And lastly, off-street parking requirements. We require 2 spaces per unit for single family and 2 family dwellings, and 1.5 spaces per unit for multi-family dwellings. Some communities are going so far as just requiring 1 parking space per dwelling unit, especially if there's on-street parking available in some way. You'll probably have people say, hey, we've got a parking problem inside the city. Well, you look at it the other way, we kind of have a walking problem inside the city. Nobody wants to walk more than a block to get anywhere. So there's different ways of kind of thinking about that. So some things to maybe think about is considering waiving or reducing the number of off-street parking spaces we require. Consider reducing side and rear setbacks for those residential lots, especially if they're high density. The BZA just did this evening for our unique 2-family product. Another thing we could do is consider determining what that minimum front yard setback could be in all districts, depending on what the street department feels will work for them and the utility needs where we're putting all the utilities on the lot. So there could be some flexibility there. One of the other criteria says to review the impact fees with the zone advisory committee for improvements. Delphi doesn't have impact fees that I'm aware of, so this wouldn't apply to us. Essentially what they're getting at is those communities that do have impact fees, making sure the fees that collect are used in the district that generated the fees and not throwing them somewhere on the other side of the town to fix a different problem. Number 7, does your ordinance have streamlining or shortening of the permitting process and timelines, including thorough one-stop and parallel processes permitting by 15 days or more? So we do allow building permit applications to be submitted in person or electronically, so we've kind of made that as easy as possible. Permit issuing for a complete building permit application currently meets or exceeds the statutory minimum processing of 5 days or less for complete applications. Another thing we do that isn't necessarily in the ordinance, but if somebody needs to get state approval for their building permit, we can go ahead and start reviewing it locally, wait on that state review. Also, if they need development plan approval, we can go ahead and take that building permit in and start reviewing those simultaneously so we can double up on those processes. So there's really not much more we can do there. Some other communities are considering especially for residential development, if the plans are all signed off on by an architect ahead of time and has some type of guarantee it meets Indiana code, there's no need to have an inspector review that structure necessarily. If it's a custom built home, that's where we would want to definitely make sure that those home plans are complying with the Indiana code, because sometimes they're designed somewhere else. Commercial and industrial is it's a totally different animal, and every project is different, so there's really no way to streamline things there. Really isn't the topic of this focus anyway. Number 8, does the city use property tax abatements to enable higher density and mixed income communities? I would say property tax abatements are a function of city council and would be considered on a case by case basis as they came up. I don't know that the city necessarily wants to adopt a policy that says, yeah, we'll just hand out abatements for anything, come on in. So, I think those need to be looked at individually. And lastly, does the city donate vacant land for affordable housing development? I'm not knowing what properties in the city that the city council owns and whether or not they would or donate it as a function of the city council, and again, would be considered on a case by case basis, so we don't have a uniform policy necessarily for doing that. So that's the point of the report that's being required as an audit for the UDO. What we would do next is using this as an outline, develop a formal report that really explains where we stand based on these points. And then we would have to open that up for a public hearing to satisfy this requirement. The statute doesn't say who holds that public hearing, but to me, it kind of makes sense to do it with the planning commission, since you're the ones that oversee and implement the ordinances and the comprehensive plan. So we could do that at the September meeting and have that all laid out for you. So some other things that came up.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, ma'am.
About that, so, when you go through that with the points in the audit, will you be providing any kind of recommendations of where you think we could tweak things or not tweak things? Because obviously it's not a mandate and some
Right.
things don't apply. Some things don't make sense to a town of 3,000 versus Indianapolis.
Right.
So will you be providing the plan commission, here's all the things that we looked at, but then here's the things we think we should change before we have the public hearing, or are we just gonna throw it all out there?
Well-
You guys should have a portion of input, right? And you're gonna be presenting it to the council, so.
Well, what I would recommend doing is only what the statute is requiring, is doing the audit and reporting how we meet each of these criteria. But I
Okay.
wanted to, with you tonight, discuss some options we could do going forward in case that's something you want to pursue. I do think with the next general assembly, there may be some mandates and more discussion. So it's kind of like, let's put everybody on alert that these things are being discussed. And we could be looking for changes in the future.
I also have a question. Who's the code? Who's the building code?
Building code?
Yeah, I would like to know who the building code is in this
It's the
town.
state of Indiana.
State of Indiana's building
I
code
just
across the
don't feel
state.
like we really have it in this community though.
It's not it's a law.
Yeah.
It's not an option. It's a law by the state of Indiana. Yep.
Yeah, so we can't, unless you want to adopt your own building code, which very few communities do, we just use what the state.
Yep.
Any other questions on? Okay, so you'll see a longer formal report, paragraphs and all that kind of reflect this going forward. Some other things that came from the legislation, and some text amendments that we will need to do. And I think you've gotten an email that has APA Indiana's legislative summary that goes through each bill and ad nauseum. So if you can't sleep, pull that out and read through it. But we do go through each point of those bills and what needs to be changed or in your ordinances or procedures. So we do need to update some of the development standards. Retail sporting goods stores and indoor shooting ranges need to be permitted by right in all commercial zoning districts. So do we have any existing shooting ranges inside the city? I have a monopoly on all my communities. None of them have an existing shooting range to deal, but Essentially what they wanna say is if you have an existing shooting range, you can't consider them a non-conforming use and say, you can't expand, you can't grow anymore, you're done. Well, this is saying if you have one, they're considered an existing permitted use in that district, and they can expand as they need to continue doing business. Another thing is we need to make sure there's nothing in the ordinance that prohibits or restricts an owner of property, private residential property, from using it as a rental. We have some communities with affluent subdivisions, and you may have an outside business come in and buy up several lots for sale, rent them out. And all of a sudden, they're not following covenants and things like that, and it creates a mess. And some communities have tried to adopt their own ordinance saying, you can't have rentals in these, neighborhoods. Well, state's gone ahead and said, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
So does that trump the HOAs and covenants?
It does not. So, but that will be up to them to enforce themselves. The city can't
Right.
say it. So just because the state says it's okay to go, if you have covenants and you have deep legal pockets, feel free to do what you choose going forward. But something that I didn't think of, or the other planners have pointed out to me, is that this will affect accessory dwelling units. A lot of times you want to say, you can have that accessory dwelling unit, but you as the property owner need to either live in the main house or the accessory home. We can't do that anymore. So if somebody wanted to build an accessory dwelling unit and then move out of state and make those both rentals, they would be allowed to do that.
But they had to meet the threshold of square, they can't rent out a 10 by 10 shed, because that doesn't be,
To be a.
it has to have the kitchen, bathroom, all the
Yeah,
requirements
we
is,
just
yeah.
Say they have to.
I'm
live
just
inside.
putting that out there because I've dealt with that at the county level.
Go get a whole building and just put it
A
on.
10 by 10 shed is now a house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So we do have to update some definitions, and these are basically, the state has come up with definitions and they prefer that you use them. It does make it easier going forward and minimizes legal vulnerability, so they have a definition for accessory dwelling unit that's actually a little tighter than what I would have expected. It's the, either 1,000 square feet or 75% of the living area of the primary dwelling, whichever is leased. So, and it also specifically calls out a manufactured home cannot be used as an accessory dwelling unit. So it would have to be a stick built or some type of, constructed home that would go on the lot. The term applicant, so you clarify who an applicant is. It seems kind of straightforward, but sometimes that jumps around a little bit. They want us to use their definitions for class 1 and 2 structures, which are residential and commercial. Their definition for homeowners association, their definition for an indoor shooting range, as well as a retail sporting goods store that would include the sale of firearms being included. Definition of a permitted use, which means anything that doesn't need to go to the BZA or planning commission for a public hearing. It's kind of straightforward, but still helps to clarify. Use the state's definition for short-term rental. They also have a will serve letter definition, which is basically the utility or an electric provider saying we will serve a site and get, permission or letter of permission. Some other things we need to do and be aware of. We'll need to prepare an annual housing progress report for the city that compares past and current residential permits with construction costs for those homes, past and current medium home sales prices and rent, as well as how the number of permits and prices compare to the income levels in your community. This is kind of a squirrel's nest of information to process for communities. And it was brought up by many people and during the General Assembly that the state is gonna be a problem to collect, especially with regard to rental rates. You could go to an apartment complex and say, hey, what's the rate for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom? And they may or may not give you that information. But we don't know, unless you have a registration program for all the rentals in town, you don't know who's renting, what those rates are. So the IHCDA, or the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, is gonna be the ones taking in this data and whatever they're gonna do to process it and come up with some findings, that they're going to be putting together a fill in the blank form for our communities to simply fill out at the end of the year. And hopefully they'll give us some sources for where the data should be coming from so that it's uniform. I have a couple of attorney friends that say, hey, this language in the statute does not say that IHCDA can prepare a form and have you fill it out, nor can they. The statute says you have to turn it in on January 1st. IHCDA has said, well, we're gonna give you the whole month of January. There's nothing in the statute that says they can give you the whole month of January. But my logic is if they're gonna make our lives easier, they're the ones processing the data. Let's get what we can to them in the form they're asking for. They have said right away that there will be changes to this language the next General Assembly, because I think this was just dumped on them and they're like, I don't know what to do with this or you know, what we're gonna do going forward.
So what are they gonna do with the data?
We don't know.
Don't know.
I'll
I
tell you,
think
but I
they-
won't say it publicly.
There's people that want homes that can't afford them, which we already know.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
And lastly, planning and permit fees, this was a big headache. There's new legislation that say you can only increase your fees once every 5 years. The fees, cannot go into effect for 6 months. It was 90 days. So if we pass new building permit fees, we have to wait 6 months before we can start charging for those fees. Makes budgeting quite an adventure. It also says fees are to be placed in a non-reverting fund and not deposited into the general fund.
Which we already have.
They're trying to. We as communities are gonna show them that we are not making a bunch of money off your permit fees going forward. So if we drop this into this operating fund just for administering permit fees and planning fees, we're probably gonna go into a hole right away. So, the State Board of Accounts is supposed to be giving us some guidelines for once your line item is in place and those fees start going in, what can you use those monies for? How do you supplement it? Does it cover salaries? Does it cover supplies? Does it cover staff or temporary staff? What can it cover? I think what the building associations are gonna find, or the developers are gonna find, is that all of our communities are gonna review our fees and go, well, if we can't up these for once every 5 years, and after looking at these, we're not covering all the services we provide, there is gonna be a huge increase in fees, and I think the developers shot themselves in the foot on it.
Which is why the state should not be telling any community several of these items, because it's not a one size fits all.
It's
So,
not. And I mean, Delphi and many communities sub out those services.
Correct.
To an outside inspector. Yeah, your fees are gonna be a lot different than somebody else's fees that has staff that does this full time, so. It's interesting.
so all this is gonna be a consensus tonight, correct?
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
So yeah, so we'll have to do the advertising for amending the ordinance for these mandated changes. And we'll throw in that 5-foot setback we just talked about as well, and just do it all in one lump sum, if that's.
I would say that for the board that, go ahead, Denny.
This is their synopsis on why people are not buying, can afford a house.
Yep,
Yep.
it's costing the developers too much to build a house.
So now they'll throw that cost to all the changes we had to make as municipalities
Yeah.
with the cuts that's already been established on top of the other cuts of consulting and the other cuts of paying for engineers and all that. So it's, I'll shut up, but I was very vocal on several of these because it's not our, I don't feel it's the state's right to say how many homes we want in our neighborhoods. It's our city, it's our people. So if we want 12, we want 12. If we want 150, that should be our decision, but not to go down a rabbit hole. But so for the part that consensus of what to move forward with, I'd recommend to the board to do the ones that's mandated at this point, and the other ones we'll look into at some point, because again, yeah, a lot of changes could happen in January. So there's no sense changing something that's going to change I don't know how much,
It was like when the UDO came about, that was the Bible. That was the Bible. Now it's a year and a half, 2 years later,
Now they're trying to take the Bible and change it from us.
now everything's wrong.
yeah, so,
All right.
That's the Bible.
but
So
So-
for bad, I am the American Planning Association, the Indiana's chapter's liaison to the legislators. I am the legislative committee, so I am following the bills. I am giving AIM, AIC, those organizations feedback on, hey, this is what could work or won't work, and here's why. And we're all working together behind the scenes. As part of this role, I also go to a national summit once a year where we get with other states and hear about the legislation they're receiving. A lot of times it's stamped off stuff. So what Florida got, we'll see as soon as they get a legislator to sponsor it, even though Florida law and Indiana law is different from Ohio, and they're all different. So it can't be a one size fits all. So, like I said, I am involved in that during the General Assembly, and I've written some of the legislation, I've provided reviews, and then I do the annual summary as well. So you can bet that I will be in there discussing all the changes that they're wanting. There is some talks. There is a legislator who's taking over this affordable housing that is willing to talk ahead of time with planners, with builders associations, and trying to get some feedback rather than January stuff just starts showing up and we're pulling our hair out. So fingers crossed that we can identify the problem and work together to come up with solutions.
So is there a consensus to move forward with the mandated information being added to our UDO,
Mandate.
the mandated stuff?
which
Yeah.
for the public record is all mandated
Yeah.
by the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
This is not local council, not local mayor, it's not local planning commissions. This is all
State of-
items that the state of Indiana says
you're going-
do it or else, right? So.
So everyone okay with the consensus? Yes. Yes.
Sure.
Good.
Yep.
All right. Got the consensus.
Talk to you guys that much forever.
Probably.
Yes, yeah.
All right. That being said, is there any other board comments? Any public comments? We don't have legal on, do we?
No.
Illegal. All right, there's one last motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Got a motion?
Second.
Aaron seconded. All those favor? Aye. All those not.
Aaron's like my back.
Meeting's adjourned.